Today we have a really great webinar set up. So we're really excited about the topic of today. As you can see on the screen, I've been joined by Matt Perez, who we will give a proper intro to in a second. Matt is the CEO of Caducation, and am I saying that right, Matt?
Yeah, perfect.
Good. And everybody make a note of his website. You can check him out and what he does at learneverythingaboutdesign.com. We'll be speaking a little bit more about what Matt does for his general day-to-day outside of giving webinars for QUICKSURFACE. We'll chat a bit about that at the end, some exciting things to talk through. The main topic for today is the power of Auto-Freeform. Specifically within that, we've got a few things that we're trying to hit. So we gave Matt a little bit of a free rein, really, in terms of what he wanted to talk about. And so Matt's got a couple of examples that he's going to work through, particularly talking about how Auto-Freeform as one of our functions simplifies complex reverse engineering. What is really useful is Matt is going to spend a little bit of time talking about the differences between QuickSurface Lite and QuickSurface Pro, a topic that we do get quite a lot of questions about after releasing QuickSurface Lite around about a year ago. So this will be really helpful for our audience today, and also just to have on reference. We will have a Q&A session. We're going to pick the questions and answers up at the end. And we also have a special announcement and a special offer for our attendees. So definitely stay on the line to the end of the session today. So without any further ado, let me give a proper intro to Matt. So Matt first began his professional career working in transportation research, where he was designing and producing data acquisition systems and equipment to support research studies for cars, motorcycles, and heavy trucks. For the last 15 years, Matt has been providing CAD training and content across a number of different CAD and CAM systems. Matt provides design consultation and training for CAD, CAM, and reverse engineering workflows. We at QuickSurface, we first connected with Matt a few months ago now. Matt was working with one of our other partners, and we just thought it would be useful to connect, and we had a chat, and there was a lot of real common background and common knowledge. From our side, from QuickSurface's opinion, we were really impressed by Matt's CAD knowledge as a starter, and also in particular his communication style. So we really liked just the way that he was able to explain things and put quite complex subjects into an easy to understand way. So from that, we had an idea of working on a little something together that we felt from QuickSurface perspective was really important and exciting. And this is the thing that we will be talking about at the end of the workshop today. So stay on to the end and you'll hear a little bit more about that. But yeah, that's the background for Matt. And just as a note, if you do want to ask any questions, click the Q&A button at the bottom. We won't be taking these as we go through the presentation today, but we'll pick these up at the end. So do type them in there, make sure it's nice and clear, and we'll try and pick up as many of these questions as we can at the end. So without any further ado, I am going to hand over to Matt now, and he's going to talk through a couple of these interesting points. So Matt, over to you.
All right, perfect, Chris. Thank you. And just a heads up with today's webinar, it is a pre-recorded video because there is a lot to fit in. We wanted to make sure there weren't any technical issues, but it'll walk through the process with QuickSurface Lite, and then we'll dive into Fusion a little bit, and then dive back into QuickSurface Pro to highlight some of those differences. With that, after the webinar, I will have the full-length video available on the YouTube channel. It's a little bit over an hour and 10 minutes, so if you are interested in any areas where we may be sped through, then you'll be able to check that out, and I think we'll also post this exact video as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started playing this video, and then we'll tackle the questions as Chris mentioned. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's webinar for QuickSurface, we're going to be talking about Auto-Freeform and some of the differences between QuickSurface Lite and QuickSurface Pro. Now, this entire process to go through aligning and creating a 3D model from a mesh takes a little bit of time, so we're going to do our best to get through as much as we can in this webinar. But after this webinar is over, we'll put a link to the YouTube channel where we'll have the full video for going through the process of doing this in Lite, and then also the steps that are different that will give you better results for doing it in Pro. So with all that said, let's go ahead and dive in, talk about the part that we're going to be doing today, and get started with some of the key steps. So this is a KTM motorcycle handlebar clamp. This is a part that we've scanned with multiple scanners on the channel, and we've actually gone through the process of reverse engineering it using traditional CAD tools. And what we want to explore today is how we can use tools like Auto-Freeform and get some of this critical geometry a little bit easier. So in order to do this, when we first have a mesh, the first thing that we need to identify, one, is the size of the triangles, or the number of triangles, and then also the quality of the mesh. So this part has a couple of areas where it's just been worn over time. Things like wires or cables or hoses rub up against it. And, there are just some areas that this could have been scanned better. It's got a little bit of orange peel. So as it was processed in the scan environment, it wasn't really, there was no aggressive cleanup or smoothing that had happened. So the first thing that we typically want to do when we have a scan like this is we want to go to our scan data and we want to reduce the noise and reduce the polygons. We want to get this into a more manageable state. So I'm going to start with reducing the noise. I'm going to increase the number of iterations. I'm going to take a look at the mesh wireframe. So if we zoom way in, you can see the number of triangles that we have here. And then I'm going to select preview. So what this is going to do is it'll go through, and all of the low spots it'll raise up, and all of the high spots it'll reduce. And what this does is this gives us, just a smoother result. It's not a perfect solution, and kind of depends on the mesh that you're using. So you may find that you get a couple of little spots that look a little suspect. So you can see here, there are some areas where maybe it's not as clean as we would hope. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to select keep original mesh and say okay. So now we've got the original mesh, and then you can kind of see the yellow highlight is the original. And then this one here, this is the smooth version. So if we hide the original, you can see it's a little bit better. Next we're going to do is reduce polygons. So when we're dealing with a mesh that has 1 or 2 million triangles, if we can reduce that and not have any potential issues with the quality of the data, then we want to do that. So let's go ahead and again show the mesh wireframe, select preview, and we'll get a look at the results here. All right, so that looks pretty good. We've reduced the overall number of triangles, and we could even go smaller than this. Let's try 25% and let's preview it. So now we're going from approximately 1.8 million down to about 500,000. All right, so that looks like a pretty good result. I am again going to keep an original mesh. We can take a look at the deviation. And so what we are looking for here, if we hide the wireframe, is we want to see everything is still green. And what this tells me is that the number of triangles aren't really affecting the quality or the accuracy of the mesh that we have to the original scan. So again, I'm going to say keep original mesh. And what this is basically doing is it's just keeping each step in the process so I can always go back if I need to. Another thing that we could do once we've reduced the number of triangles is we could try to reduce the noise again and preview that, and you can see that it's smoothing it out. One thing that I will say, I'm not going to keep original mesh on this one. I'm just going to say yes. But one thing I will say is when we start to look at the edges, the corners, the fillets, these are areas that could potentially cause problems for us. So for example, right here. So when we begin to manually manipulate the mesh, we may want to pay a little bit closer attention to those areas. But now that we've got sort of this, this mesh that we've processed a little bit, we've cleaned it up, the next step for us is to go ahead and start to create some primitives and align it to a coordinate system. So one of the primitives that we typically will do is under construct, if we have the available option, we'll create a symmetry plane. Now, the symmetry plane is going to be more helpful in Pro than it is in Lite, just simply because the freeform model can actually make use of the symmetry plane. In this case, what we want to do is create a line manually and then rebuild it. This allows the software to go through and try to find a symmetry plane based on geometry. And you can see here the results pretty good. We can turn on analysis and we can see that there are some areas that are high and some areas that are low. And I think overall this is okay. You can do some manual manipulation if you think that you can get it closer, so you can see just a little bit of adjustment. That gets us pretty close, except for on these sides right here. So what I'm going to do is create that symmetry plane, and that symmetry plane can be used in conjunction with some of the other primitives that we're going to extract to align to a coordinate system. So under extract primitives, a couple of key areas here. There are primitives that we want in order to create geometry, and there are primitives that we want for alignment purposes. So for example, if we create a cylinder in here, we're going to reduce the triangle count. If we create a cylinder in here, what we want to do is show the analysis and see how close this is. We can see right there, that's a hole in the mesh, but overall that looks pretty close. I'm gonna hit clear on this one, and I'll talk about why in just a second. But that kind of geometry, the cylinder there, can be used for alignment to a coordinate system, but it also can be used downstream in Pro to add or remove geometry from a solid body. The first thing that I really want to do here is I want to start with a plane on the bottom. I'm going to select these two areas. I'm going to create a plane. And this is going to represent the bottom face of our part. So the analysis looks pretty good. We're going to create and stay. Next, I'm going to do the same thing on the top. And when I create this plane, something that we want to consider is its relationship to the first plane we created. And what I mean by that is right now it's not constrained. We can use auto constrain, which will take a look at it relative to some tolerances like within 0.5 degree or 1.5 degrees. We can also say that we want it to be parallel or perpendicular to that first plane we created. When we make those parallel to each other, you can see the analysis is now a little bit off. If we make it unconstrained, you can see we're closer to the mesh in this case. So what this tells me is that the geometry, or at least the mesh reference of the geometry, is not perfect. That's okay, but these are things that we need to identify. What you may find that you want to do is use the top as sort of the plane of truth, and then the bottom will end up getting aligned. And the main reason for that is because the geometry we have to work with on the bottom is relatively small. It's a small area with rounded corners everywhere. And the geometry on the top is just a much better representation. So what this is telling me is I'm going to go ahead and clear this off. I'm going to create a plane, and I'm not going to constrain it. We'll create and stay. And then I'm going to repeat the plane on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and select both sides, create a plane. And in this case, we're going to make that parallel to plane 2, which was our top plane. You can see this is still green. We're going to create and stay. We just have to remember to go back and delete plane 1 because we're not going to use it. Some other geometry that we are going to create is a cylinder here. And what we can do is we can say we want that cylinder to be perpendicular to plane 3. And then just double check its accuracy. Create and stay. And we'll do the same thing up top. We'll create a cylinder. Check the analysis, then we'll make it perpendicular to plane 3 as well. Double check the analysis is okay. We'll create that. And some other geometry that we might need are things like the area where the handlebar goes. You can see the analysis is off because it's not a true cylinder. Part of this is just from use, wear and tear. As this part clamps down on a handlebar, it will actually deform an aluminum handlebar, which means that the sides are going to see more load, and then the bottom here may see a different amount of load because the handlebar is actually going to be deforming. And then throughout use, when you hit a jump or you pull back on the handlebar, that's going to start to wear these parts slightly, especially if the handlebar itself isn't perfectly round. That's okay. So in this case, that's okay. And again, we can think about constraints if we want to use those. For our purposes here, I'm going to select create. I'm going to go back to plane 1, that first one on the bottom, and I'm going to select delete because I don't need it. And then plane 2 is the top, plane 3 is the bottom. We have our symmetry plane, and then we've got a couple of cylinders. So the bottom one, the counter bore, then the part for the handlebar. So with all of that geometry, now we can go and align it to a coordinate system.
So the primary feature, the primary driving location of the coordinate system for me is going to be cylinder 2. I'm going to flip it so Z is up. And then for our actual Z location, the height of Z, we're going to stick that at the plane on the bottom, which is, or the plane on the top, plane 2 or plane 3. So depending on if you want it on the top or if you want it on the bottom, that can determine where Z0 is going to be. And then for the direction of X or Y, what we're going to do is we're going to use our symmetry plane. So that's going to have X or Y, depending on if we use right or front. It's going to have X or Y point at that symmetry plane or be perpendicular to it. From here, we want to make sure we apply to all features. That means all of our planes and our primitive cylinders are going to go with it. We'll select apply. So here now, as we look at it, if we rotate around to, say, a front view or a top view, we should get a pretty good idea of how well it's aligned. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hide all the planes and the cylinders now that it's aligned. The next step for me is to extract mesh that we want to use for Auto-Freeform. It's important that we note that there are limitations when we're talking about using QUICKSURFACE Lite. QUICKSURFACE Lite can create primitive geometry. We can create sketches and extrude and revolve and things like that. We just aren't able to cut or combine them. So that means that we can't trim surfaces together to build a solid body. We can't remove a solid body from another one. Although we can build them and export them as intermediate CAD formats like a step file or an IGES. We just don't have those tools in Lite. We have to have a Pro version. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. But right now, what we want to do is edit our scan. We're going to use the magic wand and grab the side and just kind of see where we're at. When we go to work on trimming and extracting a portion of a mesh from another mesh, what ends up happening is that the tools in Pro are quite a bit better. So we're going to be able to see that once we get to that step. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to begin expanding our selection. And what we want is we want to get pretty much all the side. We want to make sure we're not missing anything. And then use our manual tools like the freehand selection. Make sure that select through is turned off. And we're going to go ahead and just roll that around. Grab that side, and we'll do the same thing over here. If you find that this menu is in your way, if you just tap and let go of control, it will go ahead and move. So I found sometimes the menu ends up being right where I want, so I just tap and hit and let go of control, and it'll get rid of it. All right, so that looks pretty good. Once we have everything selected, what we're going to do is select copy and create. One of the tools that we have available in Pro is this split mesh with other solids, surface, or meshes. That is going to be the tool that we really use for that. But now we've got basically this extracted extra piece. So we're going to go back and edit this scan now. We are going to turn on select through. We are going to use the line tool, and we're going to draw from left to right and delete the bottom. We're going to do the same thing across the top. And part of the reason for this is because we want to get a clean boundary. We want to get it away from essentially where it is right now. And then we're going to try to do this with a circle. And let's see if we can, yeah, it should be all right. We'll just hit delete there. All right, so now that looks pretty messy. The other thing that we want to do is use a circle to get rid of that. And we'll do the same thing over here. Kind of clean up those areas. All right, so next step for me typically is going to be go into the boundaries and clean them up. All right, it's not always necessary, but you can kind of see how jagged that boundary is. So cleaning the boundary up, go ahead and bring this over. Cleaning these boundaries up, it's just going to give us a little bit of a better shot at patching them. So at the bottom one here, what you might find you do is you add an anchor point. So for example, maybe put an anchor point there. And then we'll select that bottom edge. And when we select it, we can then use that anchor point to prevent it from going up or down. We'll clear all the anchor points, and we'll select this entire edge and clean it. So what ends up happening is sometimes if you don't use anchor points, you'll notice that the edge starts to get pretty far away from its original location. So anchor points can be helpful in that regard. So we're going to select back. And now that we have this, we need to fill these two large holes. So we're going to go to Edit, and we'll fill that one. Just using the curvature method, This one's actually fairly planar on the physical part, but using the curvature method is going to give us a pretty good result. So everything looks pretty good on those. And we'll go back, and then we'll close this out. So now at this stage, we've got a mesh that we can use for Auto-Freeform, and then we've got a mesh that we can use to potentially extract some more primitives as needed. Now, remember with Lite, basically what we have here is we're going to have to export this data as intermediate CAD formats and the mesh bodies to use in a CAD program like Fusion. So at this stage, what we're going to do is select Auto-Freeform. When you're using Lite, the only algorithm we have access to is Basic. Basic and feature aligned are very different in not only the way that they work, but the results that we get. So with Basic, we have an option for target quad counts, low, medium, and fine. We can select preview. And what we're going to see a preview on the screen of is the converted surface of the freeform body. We're not actually going to see where the freeform edges go. We can look at analysis. We can see how close we are to the underlying shape. We can select medium, hit preview, see if that gets us a little bit closer. Fine. Again, we're looking at the target number of faces at 4,000. It's quite a few to replicate this. And what we see on the screen, this is the surface that we're going to be exporting to Fusion as an IGES file. So it can get pretty nasty if we have to start increasing this. I'm going to go ahead and possibly leave it at medium. I think this gets us a pretty close result. It's not perfect, but I think for the purposes of what we're doing here, it's pretty good. I'm going to turn analysis back off, and we'll say OK. All right, so now that we have this, you'll actually notice there's a big hole over here, or there's something going on with the boundary here. I'm going to double click on Auto-Freeform to edit. Any of these red dots, we're going to click. Those are regular points. I really don't like this, so I'm actually going to go back in to, I'm going to delete the Auto-Freeform, and I'm going to go back and do it again. I want to just take a look. Yeah, so that hole there, I really don't like it. I'm going to go back to low and see if the boundary is better. It's not over there. And then for fine. All right, so I think we're going to end up with fine. Even though the edges kind of look like they wobble a little bit, it's more complete around the boundary. Another option that we get when we go to a feature aligned is there's actually an option here that allows us to improve the boundary, which can be pretty helpful. But again, it's not available with the basic version. All right, so once again, we've got a couple of these red dots. We'll click the red area here, and what this will do is it'll insert another loop. Next thing that we want to do, I'm going to hide the mesh and bring back the full mesh, and this kind of gives us a good idea on where we need to go to. So I'm going to double click this bottom edge. I'm going to turn off snap mode, and I'm going to just pull this down. And the main reason for that is this part is truly extruded from this bottom section here, and at the top it's kind of extruded as well. So this is a good way for us to just basically bring this geometry up. We want it to be above the area where we want to trim it. So we're going to do that here as well. We don't want it to be the entire loop, so you can kind of see it's wrapping around. So I'm going to select this one over here. And let's hold down Control and double click there. And then that'll just allow us to basically select that loop in between those 2 points. All right, so now for this area here, if I double click this, what we want to use is this tool called Extrapolate. And what Extrapolate allows us to do is extend this inward, basically in a tangent direction from where it is. We're going to have to come back and do a little bit of cleanup on that, which we'll do in just a second. But I want to repeat that over here. So again, double click. And you have to be careful again because it looks like it's rolling over this edge. So I'm going to select there, hold down Control and double click. And let's see if we can't, it really wants to go all the way around. So let's select here, Control and double click, go back to Extrapolate, and then pull this inward. It's causing problems. So again, we're going to have to deal with this, but let's go ahead and click that irregular point. And then the next step is to go to our smoothing brush. And anywhere where we see these start to bunch up, what I'm going to do is just kind of use that smoothing brush and get them to extend out a bit. So kind of get them to space out. We can turn on analysis in just a second, but we really want to normalize normalize these points here. And remember, the key here is to get everything extended past the mesh. So that way, when we use tools like trim or cut, which unfortunately we can't do here with Lite, but when we export this to Fusion or some other CAD program, then we do have the ability to do that. So just spend a little time here using the smoothing brush, kind of get these to spread out a bit more. This part takes a little time, but let's go ahead and just spread those out, hit back, turn on the analysis, and just make sure that it's not wildly away from that edge. And from here, that's basically it. It's not perfect. It's not great. And again, part of this comes back to the Lite algorithm for doing this. The next step here is I'm going to hide that Auto-Freeform. So remember, we've got the planes. These planes are not going to get exported. So if you want these planes, you should create a surface on them. The cylinders will go because those are going to be treated as solid bodies. But for example, these planes are not. So if you want to take any data with them, what you can do is you can select that plane by using pick. And then we will create. And if you want to, you can just do things like create a rectangle. And I'm going to say OK. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this into a solid extrude. We'll say OK. And then we'll repeat that over here. So pick, top, create. We'll just make a big rectangle. And we'll extrude that as a solid. All right, so now when we export the solid bodies, those will go with them as solids. So I'm going to temporarily hide those. All right, so now we've got a surface. We've got a couple of solid bodies. The sketches aren't going to go. If you want to hide the sketches, you can. The planes aren't going to go. The sketches won't necessarily go, but now we've got all the geometry that we need. There may be some other things that you want to extract, for example, the location of the bolt holes. I'm not going to worry about that for our example now, just in the interest of time. So again, there is going to be a full video that you can walk through and you can see that. But at this stage, what I want to do is I want to save this. So I'm going to do a save as. And I'm going to go ahead and call this KTM bar clamp Lite webinar. You can see I already have one here. Those are from the full video that you'll be able to watch on YouTube. And then from here, what we're going to do is export model. So Lite, webinar, solids. When you decide which one of these formats, IGES or STEP, what STEP will do is it'll actually put all of the bodies in their own components if you're bringing it into Fusion. If you set it out as an IGES, it's going to unstitch the solids as surfaces, and we've got some tools that we can use there. The other thing that we want to do is export the scan data, and so that's going to be an STL. I'm going to do KTM bar clamp webinar Lite, and we'll send that out. And then we'll come back into this file for the Pro version where we can actually build the solid model here. But for right now, let's go ahead and hop into Fusion and take a look. So when you do this process, one important note is anything that you have hidden in QUICKSURFACE will not come through. So make sure that you do show all the solid bodies and surface bodies that you want to bring over. Now, when we do this in Fusion, by default, we're going to have a ton of surface bodies. And when you open an IGES file, by default, it'll be capturing history. Now, the easiest thing for us to do is to right-click and do not capture history. And then what we can do is go into inspect and validate. From here, we can validate. We can basically select the entire bodies folder or the unstitched folder here. So 366 individual bodies. We can select repair. This will automatically look at tolerances between edges of surfaces, and it'll stitch them together. So all of the rectangles, the cylinders, the things like the boxes, the things like that, those were already solid bodies, but when they got exported, they turned into surfaces. So that tool is an easy way for us to basically toggle those back into solid bodies. So you can see here that we've got all of those solids, and then we've got one surface. Now at this point, we'll capture design history again. And we can begin to build this into a solid model. Remember, we exported solids and we exported meshes. So KTM bar clamp webinar Lite. The coordinate system should be exactly the same from all the parts, because the mesh and the primitives and things that we extracted are all in the same location. So now we have that as a reference if we need it for things like planes. And then the tool that we're going to use can be found on the solid or the surface tools, and it's called boundary fill. So with boundary fill, we select all of the areas that we want to include in this. It can be solid bodies or surfaces, and then we pick the cells that we want to keep. All right, so when we look at the cells that we want to keep, this can be pretty tricky just based on the fact there are so many checkboxes in here. But I'm going to grab that one right there and say OK, and then we'll look at the final result we get. All right, so if we hide all of these, what we're left with is this single solid body, this one right here. You get the basic idea of how to build it. Now that we've seen how it works in Lite, how we need to divide our mesh up, how we need to export our solids and our meshes, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the features in Pro so we can identify the differences. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the planes and cylinders, and I'm going to start a new sketch. So the reason that we're going to do a new sketch here is because we're going to use sketch tools to divide up the mesh. So I'm going to draw a line that goes just underneath that fillet, and then I'm going to create a 3-point circle, and then we'll trim that. So with this tool, essentially what we're doing is, let's zoom in a little bit. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to extrude a surface. Now this will say solid on it, but it's actually a surface. But make sure it goes all the way outside the body there. And then we can use that to divide up our mesh. So right now, we've got, if we want to keep this mesh, then we should duplicate it. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it and use this copy here. We'll edit the selected mesh. And now we have this additional tool called split mesh with other solid surface or mesh. And we're going to go ahead and preview that. You can see that we've got this top section and this bottom section. We're going to say OK. Now we've got 5 individual mesh bodies. Select this one, keep only that. And I can hide the surface right now. You can see that there's some stuff left on the inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this. We're going to just create another sketch, same plane. We're going to show our mesh. We're going to do a horizontal line at the bottom. And we'll extrude that as well. So again, just make sure that it goes all the way through. And we can also use a plane. So if we wanted to create a plane, we wouldn't necessarily have to do this with a surface, but it works with a surface. So if you don't need something that's just a planar cut like we have on the bottom or across the top, so it'll just do a little bit better job. So once again, we're going to use this additional tool, allow it to divide up the mesh. We can see all the different colors. Now we're going to go in, keep this body, and then we can hide that surface, and then we'll just do a little bit more trimming here. So I'm going to use the circle tool and probably delete too much of that, but it's okay. We'll just run with it for now. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Kind of get rid of anything that looks kind of nasty. Now I've got 130 individual bodies. Select and just keep one. We'll go clean up these boundaries. Now there are a couple ways that we can do this. I'm going to clean that one boundary up. On this one over here, what I'm actually going to do is go into the holes and I'll expand this one. So that is a little bit different than cleaning up the boundary, but it might actually give you a very similar result in terms of patching the hole. You'll notice there's a couple little extra pieces here. Now this does tend to happen from time to time. What you can do is you can use this measure tool, kind of figure out what size that is. It'll keep that dimension here. We can say expand, and then we can go in and we can try to fill those holes. You might find that you end up with these little sections that don't get perfectly patched, and you may need to go back and just fill them. It's really going to be a bit dependent on how well you do at basically cutting that hole out or cutting those bad sections out. All right, so now that we've done that, we've now got something that's got a fairly smooth bottom edge on it. So again, that's one big difference between the Lite version and the Pro version is the Lite version doesn't give you the ability to use that extruded surface or planes or solids to cut away from the mesh. The next big change here is that we now have feature-aligned algorithm, which is unique. It's a unique algorithm to QuickSurface Pro. You can still use the basic one if you want, but this is the only one that's available, or this is the one that you get with Pro. With that, we still have our target quads, but we also have feature detailed, so we can do a balanced feature detail, higher, highest, low. We can play around with that. We can use symmetry. Since we used our symmetry plane to align to the XZ plane, we could select this and allow it to use symmetry. We also have this improve holes boundary option, which can be nice to clean up those edges if we need it. And so let's go ahead and just preview the results. Because we are using symmetry, I would expect it to be off from the surface, so you can kind of see on that side it's off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off symmetry and regenerate this, and you'll see that it's going to be closer because now it doesn't have to worry about putting those edges directly in the middle. But what you'll notice is that this is quite a bit closer than it was in the basic algorithm for the same medium target quad count. And the big difference here is that the boundary is much cleaner. So we get a preview on the screen of the quads instead of just the patches of the surface. We can also do a couple of other things, again, like use symmetry. We can draw curves on the mesh if we want to drive the direction. But this is a really good result. The surface patches are a lot better. The quality of them are a lot better. And then if we go into our Auto-Freeform, so what we have here is if I double click this upper edge, I've got snap mode off. If I turn on this, basically what we want to do is we want to pull this up above. And the reason for this is because we need to use those top planes, those primitives we extracted, to trim away this mesh. So we're just going to essentially extend this down and make sure that these vertices or edges are not anywhere close. The trick is going to happen here because what we end up needing to do is use this extrapolate tool. This is going to allow us to pull it out essentially in a tangency direction, and then we'll do the same thing over here. We'll switch and do it on this side, extrapolate, and again, kind of pull that out, make sure it's going pretty far. You can already see that we don't have the same issues where we have a lot of edges trying to overlap. You can still use the smooth tool here and kind of normalize those out if you have any areas where they start to bunch up. And we can rotate this around. We'll go to the side. And again, any areas where it's starting to bunch up, we'll just use that smooth tool. This is a quick way for us to kind of do this. Now remember, snap mode is off, so you do want to double check, make sure you're not getting too far away from that original mesh. So again, that's another, this is another big difference between Lite and Pro. We've got a different algorithm for Auto-Freeform. We have got a much cleaner result from that. And we have the ability to now directly in here use surfaces, solids, planes, cylinders to trim away our surfaces. So let's go ahead and just look at what that looks like. I'm going to turn the planes and the cylinders back on. I don't need all of them, so I'm going to leave just cylinder 3, which needs to be extended out. It's not quite long enough. So we've got cylinder 3. We've got plane 2. So I'm going to select cylinder 3, I'm going to select plane 2 and my Auto-Freeform, and I'm going to use the trim tool. So remember that with Lite, we don't have the ability to use all of the same Boolean tools. So what we have here, again, is the ability to trim away overlapping areas that we don't need. So for example, I don't need all this top stuff in here. I can get rid of that, and that. And then when I select OK, the final result of this, it's not going to be a complete closed solid because I didn't deal with the bottom at the same time, but the final result of this generally is going to be either a stitched together set of surfaces or it's going to be a solid body depending on what you used. So if we use plane 3 and the body, so we'll select our trim surface and plane 3, we'll do the same thing. Now, because this is going to create an enclosed volume, when we select these two and it stitches them together, the end result, instead of being a trimmed surface, is going to be a solid body. So what we're going to see after it calculates this is we're going to be essentially pretty much done with the basic solid body. Another big difference that happens with pro over using Lite is we have the ability not only to do these trim operations, but also Boolean combine operations and the ability to actually snap to the mesh. So what that looks like is if we start to create something here. So let's go ahead and let's create this. So if I'm going to extract primitives, let's say a fit line from there and fit line from here, I'm going to hold down Alt to temporarily deselect that area. There's a little bit of a jump that happens here. So I'm going to just go ahead and grab that. And then I'm just going to extend this back and forward. It's going to stay in the same horizontal orientation unless I mess something up and move it drastically. And then I'm just going to connect the endpoints. I don't care that it's not a true square or rectangle. I'm just trying to create a closed profile. From here, if we pull this up, what this actually gives us the ability to do is hold down Control and snap to that face. So we didn't have that option when we were doing this in Lite, and now we can snap directly to that face. If I show my solid, in this case it's trim solid, I can use it directly as a cut tool and go right in and remove that material. So if I hide the meshes, you can see that we were now able to cut that piece away. This is also true with the cylinders. So if we go ahead and let's go ahead and hide the solid body. I'm going to take this one, all the way up. Maybe need to zoom out all the way down. And we show the solid body. So if I select my solid body and use cut, cut is a Boolean operation that happens between solids. I can select the primitive cylinder that was created and directly cut it away. So you can see there. Again, another thing that we can do is if we bring back one of these meshes is create a 2D sketch. Somewhere we can pull out that information. I'm going to do extract primitives, a fit circle. Don't need all of it, but I'll grab all of it here. If we know the diameter of this, for example, if we know this needs to be 18 millimeters, we can now extrude it. I'm going to pull this all the way up through the solid body, pull it down, hold down Control to snap to that, bring back my solid, and use this as a cut tool. So once again, directly interacting with the mesh, giving us the ability to pull that data out. One more thing that we really need on this model is going to be these two holes here. So once again, we'll just create a 2D sketch, go up to roughly where those holes are, and extract those primitives. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, hold down Alt. Anywhere there's a big discrepancy, go ahead and grab that. This one looks pretty good, so I'll grab that. Another thing that you may want to do, again, is give these dimensions. So I know this is 7, we'll do 7 millimeters for each of these. And we might potentially want to make these lines horizontal. So I'm going to go back, click on it, make that horizontal, make these constructions since they're actually not important to us here. And then we'll give this a full dimension. They're 38 millimeters apart. And then we can extrude them. So again, hide the mesh, bring back our solid, and these are going to come down through. This one is kind of strange because it doesn't actually come all the way through with the threads, so I can't take it all the way down. It actually ends kind of right about there. And then we'll just do a cut. All right, the last thing that this thing really needs is some fillets. And again, these kinds of operations are available to us in Pro, and we cannot do all of these operations in Lite. So it's one big difference that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and create and stay. And we'll grab this. It's going to be 0.5. We'll apply. And we'll go ahead and create and stay. And we'll go ahead and just round these last couple corners off. Some of these rounded corners could be due to the scan, the accuracy of the scan. Some of them could be from manufacturer. So, but I'm just going to go ahead and just round these corners off and get this to a more finalized state. So this one here, And these inside edges. Let's go ahead and grab that edge. I'm having trouble picking it and zoom in. Here we go. And these are about 1/4 millimeter. So it's having trouble probably where it's wrapping around the corner. We'll just make that a bit smaller. A lot of these little fillets and edges, some of this stuff comes from just deburring during the manufacturing process. They don't need to be big rounded edges, but it looks like it's having trouble where it's wrapping around the corner here. So I'm just going to say cancel on that, and we'll just run with the rest of the fillets. So now that we've got this model, really the next thing that we could do is we could export this model as a solid. I'm going to go ahead and do this as a step file. I'm going to go ahead and call this one, let's just go ahead and name it Pro. And we'll bring that one into Fusion as well. All right, so if I hide the edges, you can see right away this looks quite a bit better. You know, obviously we could increase the resolution, the number of quads for the freeform body and you know, improve some of these areas. But I would just say when we're looking at the difference between that and if I hide the edges on this one, you know, that's a pretty stark difference between the quality of the surfaces. And hopefully we can also see the difference in the tool set, not just the ability to create a better auto freeform, but the addition of tools like trimming with a surface, a solid or a plane to extract part of the mesh, being able to extrude and snap directly to the mesh. So if we're trying to create extrudes or features that end directly at the mesh, you know, this is a great option. And also just the ability to do all these Boolean operations instead of having to create a bunch of individual surfaces, planes, and solids, and then export all that to an additional CAD file. So at this point, what we're going to do is we'll open it up to some Q&A. We'll talk about these processes. And again, we sped through some of this a little bit. There is a little bit over an hour-long video on the YouTube channel that will be public after this webinar. So if you want to go through and kind of spend a little bit more time on each of those. In that video, in the description of it, I'll also put a download link to the mesh. So if you want to download a trial of QuickSurface Lite and play around with it and see how you can do with it, then you'll be able to do that. So let's go ahead and let's open it up to some Q&A. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's webinar for QuickSurface, we're going to be talking about Auto-Freeform and some of the differences between QuickSurface Lite.
Hey everyone, Matt, thank you for that. I'm gonna, if you can stop sharing, I'm just gonna go ahead and share the Q&A screen here. Great.
All right.
Good. Well, thank you, Matt. Brilliant. Really interesting. Great to see the knowledge that you have and the clarity in the way that you explain things. As we said at the start, we wanted to do some Q&A, so we've got a bit of time available for this. So we have a few questions that have come in, mostly asking about whether this is going to be recorded and shared, which it definitely is. Matt's already put a link on there, so the pre-recording that he has, an extended version of that, will be available on his own YouTube video channel. You've got a link on there. At QuickSurface, we will also host the video. We will circulate a link in email to everybody who's on here, whose emails we have, so everybody will get access to this, so you can have a slow peruse and have a go yourself. Matt, apologies, I should have asked this question at the beginning, but will the model potentially be available for sharing for people to have a go, or is there any sensitivity around this?
Yeah, no, so this is a model that we've done on the YouTube channel with several different scanners. We've scanned it and we've modeled it in Fusion and done a few other things. So in the YouTube video link that I put in the webinar chat, there'll be a Fusion download link, which will have the mesh in it, as well as the 3D model that was created. So you can kind of take a look at that.
Yeah, excellent. Good.
Yeah. All right. So do you want me to jump in and start answering some of these questions,
Yeah,
Chris?
please. That would be great. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So it looks like Lenny's first question. about the SOLIDWORKS plugin. So we didn't obviously cover it here today. Getting through Lite and Pro in under an hour is pretty ambitious. So I will add that to my list. We will be covering the SolidWorks add-in for QUICKSURFACE on our YouTube channel as well as our website, where we have courses for sale. So I will add this part to our list to cover with the SolidWorks plugin. There are some nuanced differences because the CAD tools like 2D sketches and extracting meshes behave quite a bit different in SolidWorks than they do directly in QUICKSURFACE Pro. So the freeform tools would be very similar, but some of the selection tools and the CAD tools do definitely differ. So I'll toss that on our list to cover on the YouTube channel.
Cool.
Education discounts. I don't know the answer to that one, Chris. We do have an affiliate code, lead 10, but Chris, maybe you have an answer for the discounts.
Yeah, we'll share a bit more on the affiliate code at the end. Educational discounts. Best thing to do, this question is from Lenny, but it may apply to other people out there. We will share our email at the end. Reach out to us directly. Give us an indication of whether you are an educator, like are you an academic, a researcher working in university, or whether you're a student. Reach out to us and we'll give you some options that you can have a look at and come back on those. So yeah, reach out to us direct. We'll share the email address in a couple of slides' time, and we've got our general inquiries address on the website as well.
All right, then the next question here from Cyril is...
How's your French, Matt?
Well, I translated it just now. So basically they're asking if there is going to be a version with translation options. So YouTube has translation options. So if you go to the longer video that will be hosted for this on YouTube, you can change the language. It does a pretty good job of translating to quite a few languages there.
Good.
Dimensional accuracy. So Raphael, we have how would I achieve a dimensional accuracy of the bores without the dimension tool in the Lite version. So the dimension tool is available in the Lite version. You can extract 2D sketches and you can fit curves to those 2D sketches. The dimensional accuracy, what I would always say is you should measure your parts. So if you have a bolt hole or a shaft or something where you have to have a specific size, I would not rely solely on the mesh because the mesh is going to be very subjective to surface finish, ambient lighting, how many points were captured, how it was processed. But basically what you can do is you can take a look in QuickSurface Lite, or if you are using Fusion, you can extract those curves from the mesh. So in the longer form version on the YouTube channel, we do talk a little bit about pulling those curves out in Fusion as well. So if you, depending on which one you're using, you can kind of see that. But I would always say go back to manual measurements for critical features and then rely on the mesh as a reference. So the main sorry, Chris. The main thing missing in Lite is the ability to use things like Boolean operations, like extruding a sketch and subtracting it from a solid. That's not there. There's also some auto sketch tools, the ability to auto create basically a prismatic sketch from the mesh reference. Those tools are missing from Lite, but you can still extract geometry from it.
So let's pick up this last question from Ricardo. It's a long question, but Matt, if you could try and keep it tight on that, and then we'll whiz through the last couple of things I've got to go through, and then we'll wind up hopefully just about on the hour.
Yeah. So basically about QuickSurface Pro, let's see, have the knowledge and practice on how QuickSurface works. Recently received a request to reverse engineer car door handle. Very did scanning, prep, STL, entered into QuickSurface Pro and did all of surfacing, showed up with a large number of service patches, saved it as a step, sent it to the customer. He replied saying there are too many surfaces for him to work with. So what I would say is that generally with that, Ricardo, I would not use Auto-Freeform. You can try to do a custom Auto-Freeform and reduce the number of quads. But I would say that manually creating freeform on that part will give you better control. So we do have a couple of YouTube videos talking about that, and we do talk about it in a course that we have on our website. But generally, if you have to really restrict the number of patches and faces, then manually controlling the freeform body is the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your questions, and thanks, Matt, for your responding to those. So in the last 4 minutes before we officially close, and we can hang on a little bit more if needed. There's a couple of things I wanted to run through, and I alluded to some of this at the beginning in relation to the broader relationship that we at QuickSurface have with Matt and Caducation. So this is really exciting for us. We always, and actually you can get a sense of this from the questions, we always get asked by people, what are the options I've got for learning how to use QuickSurface? So we've invested quite a bit over the years in doing various things, producing YouTube video content. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but we've always had a feeling that there was a little bit more of something that we needed to do, producing a little bit more curated content in a short course format. And we were chatting about this just about at the time that we met Matt, and then we learned what Matt did, and everything fell into place. And from that moment on, it was clear to us that it would be a great fit to get Matt to produce some course content in the style that he delivers, and make this available for people who want to learn QuickSurface. So in perfect timing, this has just gone live. Matt, do you want to say anything a bit more about about your course content in general and what you've done here with QuickSurface?
Yeah, so generally the course content, we have lots of YouTube videos. We try to cover a lot of topics there, but the course content generally is more pointed and direct to what you're trying to learn. So with QuickSurface Pro, this Getting Started course is really looking at starting from not having any experience with it. So we go over the UI, we go over common terms, we walk through basic steps individually, like aligning to a coordinate system, extracting primitives, dealing with the mesh. And then we also go through a bunch of different examples. So recreating a part from 2D sketches, recreating a part with extracted primitives, and we go over automatic freeform and fit surfaces and manual freeform creation. So hopefully the Getting Started course gives users enough information to feel comfortable tackling their own projects. And we are looking to do some more advanced courses as well, so this is just kind of a primer to get people going.
Brilliant. We are really, really excited that this is now, as of this week, it's just gone live. If I share with you, so you can access through a couple of different ways. So directly through Matt's own website, which we shared the link earlier. Remind me again, Matt, learneverythingaboutdesign.com, I believe.
Yep, that's correct.
Directly from the QuickSurface website as well, we've just put a new page up, which gives you quick access to some of the content that we've already had and has been available, but just as an easy way to get through to that. And we have a direct link through to Matt's courses here from our website as well. And that will take you through to Matt's pages here, where you can have a little free preview of some of the content. And then the rest of it is accessed through the payment mechanism. And I got to say, for what Matt is asking for the content, this is a great deal, really easy, accessible way for people to be able to learn how to use QuickSurface. So we're super, super excited about this. A little plug as well. So once a month at a regular date each month, we run little workshops, which are kind of like drop-in sessions, where we will talk through various topics, and also people have the chance to ask technical questions as well. So we have a bunch of these historical ones that are pre-recorded, and then you can go through this website link here and then find when the next one is available as well. So so we have a few different ways that we're just collecting together that you can access learning and training content for QuickSurface, but we are super excited about the stuff that Matt's put together to help us out here with this. So this is brilliant, really great to have this available. So
thanks. Chris, I just also want to mention, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but with the course contact or the course content, the code LEAD10, which is the same as our affiliate link, will get you a discount on the course offering as well.
Brilliant. Appreciate that. Thank you. So we have, in addition to that, we are offering the discount for attendees of the webinar today for purchasing QuickSurface software. So using that code LEAD10, and this is available until the 31st of July. So you've got a month to exercise your special discount code. We will send an email to everybody who's on here today with the email that you registered on, with summaries of these little incentives that we have, and we'll confirm the incentive codes as well, so you can use that. So really great to have you on today, Matt. I think we're just about over the hour. It's been brilliant. Thank you for everybody for participating. We will publicize the next webinar that we have. We're trying to do these roughly once a quarter at the moment. In between those, we have our regular drop-in sessions, as we mentioned. So unless there's anything else from you, Matt, we'll sign off.
Yeah, so Raphael had one more question about the 2D sketch. Basically, the auto sketch is the thing that you don't have available. And there are, I think, some slight differences, but most of the basic constraints are available, and extracting primitives are available with that 2D sketch. So hopefully that answers your question.
Brilliant. Thanks for picking that up. Thanks, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next webinar or drop-in session. And once again, Matt, brilliant job. Thank you so much. It's been excellent. And we will see everyone again soon.